Okay, so let's pick up where we left off. Looking at Lichtenstein here, Roy Lichtenstein, and his graphic design elements that made their way into the fine art. And specifically, we're looking at his interiors and how we're going to use those going forward as we create um, our graphic novel images. And we're looking today specifically at how we create those interior spaces and how he did it. And we're looking here at one of the interior spaces, and I want to pay attention to three or four things that these works demonstrate. The first one's that single point perspective, the understanding that as things go back into space, they appear to get smaller. If you were to hold your fingers up and look at a friend, 20 feet away from you, might look like their head is only about an inch tall, but you know their head is much bigger than that. If you look at a road going off into space, you notice that it gets smaller as it gets further away. That notion is what we call single point perspective, and the idea is that along the horizon line, where the sky meets the land way off in the distance on that horizon, is a point at which all things that kind of run parallel to us, run alongside of us, where those points will converge in what we call the vanishing point, where things will get so far away from us that they appear to vanish essentially. And so the other thing that we're going to look at is, besides that single point perspective and how we're going to try to capture that, we're going to look at how use of pattern can be created, particularly in these graphic novels and graphic images. Uh, Very often, particularly in early printing, pattern supplemented a lot for color. And then we're going to look at how the notion of that graphic image becomes the part of the storytelling fine art. And last but not least, simple colors. We're going to be looking at some simplified colors here. And so let's talk real quick about the notion of single point perspective. So what we're talking about here again is the idea that you have this horizon line, a line that continues across vertically from a left to right across that plane that we see, and it is essentially the horizon where the sky meets the land and way off in the distance. If we could see through the walls and we could see out as if we were looking at the ocean where the ocean meets the sky, that's what that horizon line represents. If you'll notice the lines that represent the table, the walls, those shelves there on the left or bookcase, whatever that is, the chair there on the right, all of the lines that run parallel, that run in the same direction with each other, uh, essentially point to the vanishing point. So the corner of the wall where the wall meets the ceiling, both of those, in reality, they would run parallel to each other in a room that is square. And so when we see these things, though, in perspective, those lines are no longer parallel. They begin to point to that vanishing point. So that's what we're looking at, is how we can create that perspective, that illusion of depth. And we are going to be using, as always, my favorite application, Chrome Canvas. That's what I'm going to be using. If you got paper, pencil, and a ruler, boy, that'll help you out a little bit. I'm doing this freehand because, oops, actually, I'm going to start off with this. Um, the idea being now we can kind of see that we have a horizon line across the middle. If we were to see through this room, we've got perspective lines that show what the corner, and I'm just going to draw these in here so you can see what I'm talking about as I talk about them. But this is the corner of the wall where the wall meets the ceiling. This is where the floor meets the ceiling. Again, I mean the floor meets the wall, where the ceiling meets the wall, where the floor meets the wall. And all of those lines that would run parallel are now pointing directly towards that vanishing point, way off in the distance. Everything that we put in this room, that if we put a table here, for instance, and let's say the edge of the table closest to us is this wide, we're going to know that to go back into space, that those lines that go to that front edge of that table are going to point back to that vanishing point, so that our table in perspective here is going to look like this. I can put legs on my tables. I draw it in here and that sort of thing. So I'm going to, as always, first I want to do some of that stuff there because now that we understand what we're going to do, I'm going to erase and come back out. And I'm going to start from scratch. So I've got a blank piece of paper like you might have a blank piece of paper. Oops. Let's try that again. What? Come on. All right. And what I'm going to do, as always, I'm going to pop in a couple extra layers. And somewhere near the bottom, I'm going to take my marker here and I'm going to make the basic outline of my room. Turn this down a little bit. Opacity can be up. And I'm just going to make a basic rectangle room. Okay, and we'll start with the rectangle that is my paper. If you're using a single piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, you can do the same sort of thing. You can have that paper, you can actually fold it corner to corner, then fold it corner to corner again. And let me see where I had a straight edge here that I was going to use specifically for this. I'll use this. Notice how I like to improvise here with tools. But I'm going to try to draw a diagonal line that goes this way. And instead of folding my paper, because I don't want to fold my computer in half here, I'm just going to draw the lines like that. So now I've got two lines that crisscross. And when they do, they're going to give me that vanishing point that's way off in the distance. I then know where my horizon line is going to be. It's going to be on that vanishing point. So I'm going to draw this across here. Now I've got my horizon line. And I've got my perspective lines that show the depth of those walls going back into space. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my back wall in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to first establish sort of how wide it is. I'm going to say it's okay, it's that wide. So where the ceiling meets the walls, I'm going to draw my box in. And now I have my back wall in there. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. Now that I can see I've got my back wall, I don't want to look at those lines that go all the way back into space because that's kind of taking away the illusion there. So I'm going to go to my next layer above. And I'm going to take a blue so I can see what I'm doing here. And I'm going to take my pen and I'm just going to draw in the walls and the floor of my room without the horizon line and without those perspective lines going all the way back to the horizon line. I don't like that line very well. All right. And I'm freehanding this, so again, perfection isn't necessary. All right. Now I can turn my layer off here that's got this, and now I've just got my room. Whoop, draw my front in here. So now I've just got my room. I've got the walls, I've got the floor, and I've got the ceiling, and now I can start adding some detail. Go through here and get rid of that line because I don't like it very well. All right. And so now I'm going to start adding a few details. And just like in Roy's, let's look at his and kind of take a look at what sort of details he had in his. Chairs, tables, he's got couches, there's a carpet, paintings on the wall. So let's consider, and he's even got some cool little ceiling sconce lights. So let's take a look at how we can add some of those same elements maybe in ours. So again, I'm going to add a layer or go above a layer above that one. You know how I love my work on my layers here. And I'm going to grab my pencil, turn it down, turn the opacity up, and choose black. And I'm going to start thinking about maybe What if I had some of those sconce lights in the ceiling? And notice I'm drawing them kind of squished, not a circle, because a circle is how it would look like flat to us. But now we're going to put that circle in perspective. So think of it this way. Let me find a circle. Well, we can show it with a post-it note. Okay. If I have a circle and I'm looking straight at it like so, it looks like a circle. But as I tilt it to make it look more representational of it on the ceiling, as you can see, it starts to flatten that. The shape of that circle now becomes a sphere. It begins to, or oval, I should say. It begins to oval out, and not sphere, but an oval. And so now I've got my little oval sconce lights. I'm going to think about maybe paintings on the wall. So again, if I establish, I'm going to remember my vanishing point is right back in here. But if I establish where the front of a painting might be, and I'm going to make it about this tall, and I'm going to draw my straight lines that go back to my vanishing point. So I'm showing that perspective. Now again, I'm going to draw in my back side of that painting, but I'm going to take my eraser and get rid of those perspective marks. Whoops, got rid of a little too much of it. All right. So I have something that looks like this. That's my, whoops. All right. So I've got a painting that might be here. Let's put one over on this side. So I've got my vanishing point. I'm going to leave that there so I can keep drawing. And I'm going to say on this side, the painting goes this tall. Okay. So I'm going to draw my perspective lines going back in space towards that vanishing point. I want to draw in that back side of that painting, and that painting is going to look something like that. If I put a couch over here, a couch is sort of an L shape. This is sort of a backwards L shape. Maybe we'll put a matching couch over here. So you're going to start off with the L shape that is the couch. All right, and maybe it's sort of a comfy couch, so it's kind of thick here. So we're going to draw the profile, the side of this couch. And again, we've got a little matching one. This is a very symmetrical room. Now, from those different corners that represent those lines that would be parallel, I'm going to draw lines. Let's turn the size way down on this one. Okay. And I'm just going to draw the lines so you can kind of see them. I'm going to come back and erase the ones that go further back here just momentarily. As you can see, the lines I'm drawing are going back in space towards that vanishing point. And let's put the top line there, and then the back of this couch is going to look now something like this. Okay, and I'm going to take my eraser. I'm going to erase that line. All right. And so now I've got my couch there. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to draw lines. Well, help if I chose my pencil now, wouldn't it? Alright. Remember, these lines are just pointing back towards that vanishing point. And again, my couch is going to look something like this in perspective. Now, eraser. Now, it wouldn't really be a couch with a leg or two. It's kind of floating, so let's put legs on here. And again, the ones in the back are going to be a little shorter because that line's going to point back just like the line of where those feet would meet. All right. So now I've got my legs on my couch. I've got my couches. And let's say there's going to be a table right here in front of this couch. So this is going to be the front edge of that table. and I'm going to have it kind of go back into space. So I'm going to create those lines that show that perspective. All right, and maybe it's a short table. It goes back about that far. Let me erase the extra lines here. So now I've got a table in perspective. All right. Oh, all right. And let's put some legs on that table. Alright, and we might see a little leg back there that's kind of peeking out. Kind of put those in there. Alright, because we would see this line kind of coming, something like that. So maybe not be quite that long. Let's make it just a little shorter so we keep it in perspective. Okay, so that's kind of what we've got there with our table. And because the focus here is on art, I'm going to draw one more painting because this is on the back wall and it's flat looking at us. It doesn't utilize perspective lines. Now I'm going to start adding some of that pattern and color in. And so I want to think about, you know, how did Roy use pattern? And if you notice, let's go back and look. He used a lot of stripes, um, dots, polka dots, what we call stippling. We got lots of little dots. Now his are very organized. Those dots just aren't random; they're patterned. Everything is very strategically aligned, and so. But we do see flat colors: flat red, flat orange, flat yellow kind of oranges and that sort of thing. And then, so what we're going to do is I'm going to start adding some basic flat coloring areas, and then I'm going to come back and add some of that pattern over. So let's start looking first at adding. So because we're adding color, what am I going to do? Of course, I'm going to go to the bottom. You know how I am. I like to put my color at the bottom. And I'm going to choose a really sort of Lichtenstein-esque color. I kind of like this red. Let's go with something like that. And I'm going to make this whole back wall red. And again, I want to think about how Roy used color. Did he use lots of complicated color? No. Remember, lots of primary color. Um, Part of that nature of that graphic design element bringing in is, you know, for you look at comic books, old comic books, and that's sort of what, we talked about a little bit how Roy incorporated that comic book or graphic novel into design into his fine artwork. I'm going to go with another color, and I tell you, this one I'm going to go with the marker, and I'm going to go with a yellow. There we go. And the reason I'm choosing marker is because if you notice too, a lot of his had some very, a lot of the color was very consistent. Almost too big. There you go. Turn that just a little bit. I get a little crazy, so I'm going to turn that just a little bit. And so you guys are doing something very different. Yours is not going to look like mine. Yours is going to look like yours. But I would like for you to have a two-dimensional space that is showing depth, a single point perspective depth. I would like for you to put some rectangular type things in it just to show that you understand how those depth or perspective lines work. And then I'd like for you to use some basic color and some pattern and just show me that you can create a sort of basic Roy Lichtenstein, I think it is, drawing. And so I'm gonna go with this teal. It's not exactly primary, but it's kind of a basic color. I really like it. All right. Oh, so I'm not too worried about getting over the lines because I'm more concerned about time right now. And I'm just about done throwing in this color. Alright, after I do this, I'm going to throw a little color in on the furniture, and then we're going to pop in our floor. And last but not least, we will start throwing some color and some pattern into this. So I'm gonna go with a crazy blue for this floor, purple, I mean, kind of a blue purple. All right, what color we're gonna make the? Oh, I'll put that on top after all. I don't want all the way at the bottom. All right, well, to redraw some of those lines there. Oh. Put those legs back in there. All right. Okay. And let's get our furniture in. I'm gonna go with some orangey kind of color here. Let's go with a marker. Oh, let's see. Let's do that. Let's do that because I do want to make sure that this is at the bottom. All right. I don't want to see my counts through there. I don't want to mess this up. All right, and so now I've got orange on my couch. Got blues for my floor, teals for my wall, yellow for my ceiling, orange for the back wall, and I've got some lines I can see through that couch. I probably shouldn't be able to see, but I'm probably gonna fix most of that when we throw the pattern in there. And I want to put a little color on the table. Do something wild and wacky with that. All right, and let's throw a little nice screen here. All right. And then how can we roy this up a little more? We're going to throw our pattern in and take a look at how ours compares to what he's done. And we'll have our first piece representative of this graphic novel sort of design. I'm going with the color that sort of matches those couches. Last but not least, let's throw some pattern in here. I'm going to throw a little green going across. Oh, undo that, undo that. All right, let's go with this and opacity up and size up, and we're going to just little pattern here. I'm just going with lines across the floor that create a vertical pattern, line pattern with parallel lines. I'm going to go with, let's see, let's go with some crazy blue. Oh, no, I don't like any of that. Uh-oh. Guys, if your canvas ever locks up on you, just back out and go back in. Dang it. Alright, last time. Here we go. Oh, goodness. Well, I tell you what, it may be time to wrap this up. I think Chrome Canvas is telling me it's time I need to restart my computer. All right, I'm going to add some pattern in on mine. We'll see how this goes. Let me try it over here. Let me see. Is it going to let me do pattern? It may let me do a bit. So I'm going to add a little dot pattern over here. I'm trying to be sort of consistent so I don't lose that consistent pattern that Roy had. But I think you all can see that I'm not having super luck with my, there we go. Oh, goodness. Okay, that's a little better. So I'm trying to make sure my spacing remains sort of consistent so my pattern is not too horrible. And so I'm going to end up here, sort of ended here. I'm going to continue working on it because I like mine and I like working on these. But I'm going to hopefully have a little more success with, oh, maybe. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if I'm going to have more success with it or not. Let's see. Let's go on top here. All right, I kind of like that pattern. All right, you're going to finish yours out, get yours turned in for your assignment, two-dimensional, single point perspective, basic primary, secondary colors, that sort of thing, and incorporate pattern. Thanks a lot. We'll see you soon.